Sometimes our behaviour can be what psychologists consider dark. We might have a lack of empathy sometimes when someone else is in need. Perhaps our own self-interest in the workplace for that promotion ignores compassion for others. And maybe we focus too much on our own image and presentation. All these types of behaviour have been categorised as the dark triad in psychology. The first trait is narcissism, all about grandiosity and self-love, which can also make people intentionally dislike others. The second part is Machiavellianism. This describes an individual as manipulative, cold, cunning, and has no ethical concerns. Finally, we have psychopathy, the impulsivity and erratic side of emotions that influences antisocial behaviour. As a note, in personality psychology, all these traits are dimensional. For example, if we were to say someone scores highly on trait psychopathy, this does not make them a psychopath. Instead, it merely means this individual will be showing psychopathic characteristics in their behaviour. The dark triad can therefore be applied to the political world. This video intends to cover some of the research between the dark triad personality traits and different political attitudes. To uncover the darkness we undoubtedly already associate with politicians and participants. To start with narcissism, it is defined as all about grandiosity and self-worth about the individual. Individuals scoring high on trait narcissism are willing to engage in the political world, even when their political knowledge is not particularly strong. Narcissism creates confidence regardless if an individual does not know much about something. Researchers found in another study that individuals scoring high on trait narcissism are also more likely to be confident in running for a political office. Therefore, someone's high narcissism can range from political engagement to running a political campaign. The focus on one's own appearance can be quite useful for political campaigning, as it grants the confidence for being a public image. Although a consequence of this is that it can disillusion someone who has little political knowledge. Trait narcissism also predicts for conservative and populist political attitudes. Therefore, it is more likely those rating high on narcissism are more likely to be right-wing in the political arena. The darker side of this trait is its relationship with political extremism. High levels of narcissism is related to an individual extremely supporting their political views. Therefore, this can lead to less diplomatic political discourse and more ideological extremes. Researchers emphasise this should not be conflated with narcissism's relationship with right-wing political attitudes. The two are independent of each other. Just because narcissism is associated more with conservatives does not mean conservatives are political extremists. Trait Machiavellianism derives its name from political theory. Therefore, we might find more than justified grounds to assume this trait is present in politics. Those to be Machiavellian are characterised by the manipulation and exploitation of others. Traits Machiavellianism and trait narcissism overlap when it comes to perceived qualification. Those scoring high on trait Machiavellianism will also see themselves as educated enough for a political position. However, there is no established relationship between trait Machiavellianism and lower political knowledge, something which is unique to trait narcissism. The domain which Machiavellian individuals are unsurprisingly associated with is political ambition. An individual that obtains unethical methods for pursuing their self-interest, even at the hurt of others, will be predisposed to the ambition of gaining political power. The political theorist where we get this trait's name from is Niccolo Machiavelli. In his famous treatise The Prince, as mentioned in previous videos, is all about gaining and holding on to political power. So it should come at no surprise to see this trait in open alliance with political ambition. Political psychology has created two influential measures: right-wing authoritarianism, all about order, tradition, and extreme conservatism, and social dominance orientation, which tests constructs like social hierarchies and intolerance. Trait Machiavellianism was the only trait found to be associated with both of these measures. Machiavellian individuals may show ruthlessness, resulting to more extreme means to satisfy their political ambitions. As we saw, the traits narcissism and Machiavellianism overlap. In the case of trait psychopathy, this overlaps more with trait narcissism. Researchers define trait psychopathy as impulsivity, callousness, interpersonal manipulation, stimulation seeking, and low empathy. We understand how the trait narcissism is associated with political interest, political conservatism, and political extremism. All these domains are also associated with trait psychopathy. We could speculate that consequences of this would explain why conservatives have lesser remorse for social inequality. And the low empathy of trait psychopathy facilitates the attractiveness for political extremism. Researchers also found that trait psychopathy and narcissism also predict authoritarian political correctness. This is a good contemporary example of our times. Political correctness may have been well intentioned at the start, whether you agree with it or not, but here we can see how those dark traits have found a place in perverting political correctness to authoritarian means. Trait psychopathy's relationship with the political world seems to be situated in the realm of extremism. No relationship is found in detail between the trait and more specific political domains, such as perceived qualifications to run for a political office or level of political knowledge. The only detail to be found is in the case of political populism, which is the common people collectively fighting against evil. Trait psychopathy and trait Machiavellianism too were interestingly negatively associated with populism, meaning populist supporters do not score high in trait psychopathy and Machiavellianism. Now this can all seem quite overwhelming. Not only are there many relationships between dark traits and politics, but they overlap and absent relationships we are not sure of. So far we have associated these dark personalities with right-wing political attitudes. There is still darkness, however, on both sides of the political arena. Depending on the moral issue and how someone judges it, you will get a different response. The measures researchers might be using at the moment might be more conservative-minded issues, which yield a conservative response towards the dark triad. When we begin to add in more diverse moral issues when asking participants in studies, we start to see the darkness in liberals too. In closing, it is important not to label. Just because someone has a personality trait that is called dark does not make it inherently evil. It's simply just a characteristic. Every personality trait has its consequences and usefulness. To illustrate this, in other research, conservatives rate higher on trait conscientiousness than liberals do. This also does not insinuate that all conservatives are hard workers and liberals are lazy. It means conscientious characteristics are to be found more in conservatives genuinely. We shouldn't see someone as a bad dinner guest if we were to label their politics to dark personalities. It is just a way to understand someone's politics, not to demonise it. We all know politics attracts morally questionable individuals, and others that show more authoritarian attitudes than democratic ones. With the dark triad, we get a more comprehensible understanding, putting the light on the darkness. To go along with this animation, a poster has been made all about the dark triad and how it manifests itself in political behaviour. And as always, thank you for watching.